Okay, so we're holding Parshas Vayishlach. And in a way, this week's Parsha, or this teaching, is a continuation of last week's teaching, where we said that Ma'isa Avos Simin Labanim. Now, whatever happened to our forefathers is a lesson for us in our lives. And last week we said that Yaakov, before he went on his journey, he had angels protecting him. And when he came back, he had angels honoring him and giving him gifts. And the whole story of Yaakov going into exile is our story as well. And we're continuing with this theme in this week's Torah portion. And what does it say towards the end of Parshas Vayishlach? So here, this is way after Yaakov left Lavan, and Lavan caught up to him, and he makes peace with Lavan, and then he encounters Esav, and then he parts ways with Esav, and now finally, he's arriving in the city called Shechem, and this is also after he fought with the angel, and the angel hurt him on his hip. So he's been through all the trials and tribulations possible, and now he's finally coming to a place where he's able to take a breath, to breathe. And what does it say? Vayava Yaakov Shalem. Yaakov came whole. Ir Shechem, to the city of Shechem, Asher Beretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. That's the pasuk that we're gonna be addressing. Okay. So on the pasuk, and Yaakov arrived Shalem to Shechem city, says the Gemara, and it is brought down in Rashi, that Yaakov was Shalem in areas 3, in his body, money, and Torah study. Okay, so Shalem means complete. Yaakov came complete, and if you look into Rashi, Rashi says Shalem, intact. Shalem begufay, he was intact bodily. Okay. Shenisrape mitzil asay, for he was cured of his limp. So, okay, so what happened? What happened was Yaakov fought the angel, and he got hurt. And now finally, this is after 18 months, now he comes to the city of Shechem, and now he's finally healed. He's complete, and now he's complete and he's cured from his limb. Then it says Shalem b'mamonai, he was intact, he was complete regarding his money. Shaloi chaser klum, for he did not lose anything. Mikol oisei dairoin, as a result of the gift which he gave to Esav. Basically, I didn't know this. It wasn't a one-time gift. Yaakov kept sending gifts to Esav for 9 years. So basically, he was spending a lot of money giving Esav gifts. And by the time he came to this place called Shechem, his animals reproduced enough that he was back in the same place that he was before he started giving Esav any gifts. So he got back his money. And Shalem b'seirasai, he was intact in his Torah. Shaloi shachach talmudai b'veis Lavan, that while he was in the house of Lavan, he did not forget what he had learned from his father and from Shem and Aver, because he was in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver for 14 years before his journey, and he did not forget any of the learning while he was in the house of Lavan. This is Rashi. We read the pasuk, we read the Rashi. Okay, I'll just catch up here. Okay, in Rashi, for areas 2, meaning the area of the fact that he was healed, his body was healed, and for the money, the Medrash's explanation shines through. Yaakov was whole because he was healed from the limp in his body. Although he gave Esav gifts for 9 years, he got back his money. So the first two cases, the first two areas where Yaakov is complete, where Yaakov is whole, Rashi takes this from the Medrash. Copy paste. But regarding Shalom and Torah, the fact that Yaakov was whole in his Torah, the Medrash doesn't say anything. Regarding Shalom and his Torah, the Medrash provides no explanation. And in Rashi's commentary, we find a contradiction. In the Talmud, Rashi says he didn't forget his learning despite the hard journey. But in Chumash, Rashi says he didn't forget despite being in Lavan's company. Okay, so now Rashi's on his own. For the third issue of the fact that Yaakov is whole in his Torah study, what does that mean? So in Chumash, Rashi says, what does it mean? He was whole in his Torah study. It means that he didn't forget any of the learning that he had in Lavan's house. However, in the Gemara, in the Talmud, a different place, Rashi says something else. He says, what does it mean that Yaakov was whole in this Torah study? That while he was journeying, it didn't impact his Torah study. He didn't lose out. And the fact that he was traveling, he didn't lose out in the area of Torah study. Usually when a person is traveling, the time that they're traveling, they're not able to learn, except for my husband. We went to Philadelphia yesterday for a bas mitzvah, and on the way home, he's teaching me he's reading from his phone and teaching me the teaching while he's driving. But other than him, usually most people can't teach and drive at the same time. But anyway, usually the journey holds you back from learning, and here he was still complete. The journey didn't affect him. Okay, so there's a contradiction. Here, in the Chumash, Rashi says that he was shalom in his learning. He didn't forget anything from the house of Lavan. In a different place, in the Gemara, he says, what does it mean Yaakov was whole in his learning? It means that he wasn't affected, his learning wasn't affected by the journey. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Welcome. Okay. Rashi's job is to explain the verse according to the most simple meaning. Which explanation do you think is more fitting in Chumash? Which is a more simple, straightforward explanation for the fact that Yaakov was whole in his Torah study with regards to this verse? What does this verse say? Vayavai Yaakov Shalem. That Yaakov arrived whole. So if I'm talking about Yaakov's Torah study, which interpretation fits better with Yaakov arriving in Shechem? Which do you think? Do you think it's a more simple explanation to say that Yaakov didn't forget his Torah study in the house of Lavan, which happened way back, versus Yaakov's Torah wasn't affected from his journey? Which one is more current? The journey, and it says Vayava Yaakov Shalem, and Yaakov came whole. So we're talking about a journey. So Rashi, if wants to say that Yaakov came whole, he should say that the journey didn't affect his learning. He was whole in his learning, even though he just came from a journey. But Rashi doesn't use that. Rashi's going back to something that happened in the past. That when he was in Laban's house for 20 years, you should know that he didn't forget his learning then. So that's one of our questions.
Significant that he didn't lose his learning in all those years. Then in a trip. A trip, yeah, you may forget it for the minute, but it doesn't really.
Right. So this was
20 years. doing other things, that
Right.
in that instance, you might.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. That's a very good suggestion. What? Yeah, it's a very good suggestion, but but we have to realize that the trip wasn't a week-long trip. This was at least an 18-month journey, and it's more current. We're talking about things, when we say, when you do process of elimination, like which things belong, right? So the fact that he hurt his hip and the fact that he lost his money is in the same time period. It's in these 18 months. So the fact that he retained his Torah study in the journey is also fits. It's in this time frame, and we're talking about him arriving in Shechem. So seemingly, it's more of it fits better to use the explanation that he was complete whole in his Torah study, the fact that he didn't lose anything from the journey. But yet, the talking about the journey that he was complete in his Torah from his journey, that Rashi uses in the Gemara, which is not limited to the simple interpretation of the verse. And here, where Rashi tries as hard as possible to be as literal as possible, here we're going kind of out of the box and saying, oh, what does it mean? Yaakov was whole in his Torah study. That in Lavan's house, you should know that for 20 years he didn't forget his learning. In the house, the learning that he learned by his father, and the learning that he learned for 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Eber before he even arrived in Haran. So Rashi, so the Rebbe is bothered by this, is asking about this. Why is Rashi choosing specifically this explanation that Yaakov didn't lose, that Yaakov is whole in his Torah study from the house of Lavan? Why Rashi specifically going to that explanation?
Could it be maybe because he had bad influences over there and he still didn't forget his study?
Excellent point, and we're going to definitely mention it in a bit. Excellent. Okay. Everyone is very focused and into the class, which is amazing. Okay. Okay, I don't know if I read this now. Okay, regarding Shalim in his Torah, the Medrash provides no explanation. And in Rashi's commentary, I read this already, we find a contradiction. In the Talmud, Rashi says he didn't forget his learning despite the hard journey. But in Chumash, Rashi says he didn't forget despite being in Lavan's company. Seemingly in Chumash, it would be more fitting for Rashi, who explains the pasuk's simple meaning, to say that Yaakov didn't forget his learning because of his journey, because the pasuk is speaking about Yaakov's arrival to the city. The Medrash says Yaakov was healed and got his money back immediately. The Medrash says that when the angel heard him, the next day the sun rose and the sun healed him immediately. That's the Medrash. But according to the simple meaning, it all happened in 18 months naturally. So again, as I said before, the hip and the money, it didn't happen overnight that he got it back. It was an 18-month process, and the same thing would be with the Torah learning. When in Shechem, Yaakov, bought property, he could resume his Torah study. Seemingly, this is the simplest way to explain that he was whole finally. So when we're saying Yaakov arrived in Shechem and he's whole, seemingly what would make sense is that he arrived whole, his hip is cured, his money is replenished, and now he's finally arrived in Shechem. He could finally resume Torah study, and he didn't lose anything from his journey. That would seem to be the most fitting explanation. Okay. Okay, so we could say that the fact that we could say that Vayava Yaakov Shalim, that Yaakov arrived whole, that it doesn't have to just be what happened in those 18 months. We could say that Yaakov arrived whole, means that we could include what happened in Lavan's house. And what it means, Yaakov arrived whole, it means in all the areas. In all the areas, when he arrived in Haran, when he arrived in Shechem, he was whole, and the fact that he retained that he didn't forget Torah learning in Lavan's house, that's okay. The Torah was whole in Lavan's house, and now we're just waiting for all three things to materialize, and then we say Vayav Shalem. Only then do we say that Yaakov is whole.
Meaning you arrive with that in trauma.
Meaning that what?
You arrive with that any bad feeling trauma in life, like in today, when it is trauma. I have to run away. I was slave.
Yes.
That is.
So we could say, okay, Yaakov arrived Shalem, that now finally in all three areas he's whole, and he was always whole in his Torah study even from way back then. But it still doesn't answer the question. If I have the ability to use the explanation that he didn't lose his Torah while in his journey, why am I specifically going to a further past event? Why can't I just take the fact that Yaakov was journeying, and it makes sense that when you're journeying, it would be hard for you to be whole in your Torah, and that it didn't affect his Torah. Why am I going further back when I have something right here in front of my face, an explanation right in front of my face? Why do I have to go back to Lavan's house when I could so easily use the explanation that Yaakov is whole, that the journey didn't affect him?
Maybe Rashi wanted to say for Shuvah. Like even so he was in Lavan and he hold on, but as he's traveling and fighting with the Malach and the family, and being scared of Esau, he still hold on to his qualities, to his emunah and everything.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a Shuvah.
Okay, so we're going to see everyone's coming up with really good explanations. We're going to see where the Rebbe is leading us. Okay, so here just in poem form, we could say that Yaakov was shalem in his Torah previously, and only in Shechem he was whole in all three areas completely. But for the simple meaning in Chumash, why does Rashi choose to specifically say that in Lavan's house his Torah he didn't lose? Why are we going back to Lavan's house?
Is he saying that even in the face of evil, he remained?
Although he was in Lavan's house, and Lavan could have been such a negative influence on him.
Right, but it wasn't.
He wasn't. He was not affected. He was not affected by Lavan, and he didn't forget his Torah study. And we're going back to this. We're going back to Lavan instead of using something much more current. Instead of using current events, they're going back to Lavan's house. Why?
Because past events do influence you.
Yeah, building blocks of life, really.
Okay, so it's all excellent answers, but it's different than the Rebbe's approach. Okay.
Well, we're not. Yeah. We're expected.
Okay. So now we're going to ask another question that once we ask the question, we're all going to wonder why we didn't ask the question in the first place. And then from this is going to lead to the answer. We also need to understand another question. Actually, okay, we have two more questions. Okay. Why doesn't Rashi mention that Yaakov was shalem, that Yaakov was whole with regards to his children? To include this fourth area would seem right, because Yaakov was afraid that his children, Esav, would strike. Okay, it doesn't rhyme. I have to fix that. Okay. Probably. Okay. So the fourth, another area where Yaakov was whole was in the area of his children. He was petrified that Esav was going to harm his family. He divided them into two camps. He said if Esav comes to strike one group, the other group could flee. So the fact that after he encountered Lavan and Esav and his family is still whole, why doesn't Rashi say that? Vayava Yaakov Shalom. Yaakov came whole. It should say not just with his body and his money and his Torah, but should speak about his children. He arrived with all of his children safe and sound.
Family wasn't told that story.
Okay, Rachel passed away. Did Rachel pass away by this point?
Later.
Okay, so
Wasn't born yet.
okay, well, that's a good question. But at this point, okay, excellent. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so far only 11 children are born, and yeah. When they encounter Esav, it's only they all bow, and it's Yosef and Rachel. Binyamin is not born yet. Okay, so that answers that. Okay, so his whole family is intact at this point. And why doesn't it mention that his family is complete? His family was in real danger. Dina, they hid Dina in a box. They were afraid he was going to take Dina. So why doesn't it mention the children? This is even more puzzling because Abraham got 3 blessings when he was traveling. He was promised that it wouldn't diminish his children, money, or name. So we would expect that for Yaakov, the blessing would be the same. When Avram is traveling, Hashem also promised him. Usually, traveling affects that you can't have that many children and that you don't have an opportunity to make money, so you're losing money. And your name, your fame is also in jeopardy when you're traveling. And Hashem said to Avram, don't worry, your name and your children, and it's not going to affect you having children. It's not going to affect your money, and it's not going to affect your name. So we would also think that when it comes to Yaakov also got a promise for protection from Hashem. So for sure, this would include the fact that his children would be safe. And how come there's no mention of children here when he's saying that Yaakov came, Yaakov Shalom, the Yaakov came whole? Why doesn't it mention his children? Okay. First, we need to understand a general wonder. Why doesn't Rashi say Shalom means that Yaakov was saved from danger? If I say he came in one piece, he came whole, right? Why start talking about details, about a hip, about a present, about Lavan's house? Why are you talking about little side issues? Why doesn't Rashi say Vayava Yaakov Shalom? Guess what? He was saved from the lion's den. Lavan and Esav was basically the lion's den. And in the very next Rashi, it actually says this. In the very next Rashi, it says, 2 Rashis later, for the same pasuk, under the words B'vayim Padan Aram, upon his coming from Padan Aram, what does Rashi say? Like a person who says to his friend, Yatzam Plaini Mibein Shnei Arayos, so and so emerged from between 2 lions. Uvash Shalem, and he came intact, he came unharmed. So the word Shalem is used to mean that he was safe, that he was unharmed. Afkan Vayavay Shalem, here too, Vayavay Shalem, and he came intact. Mipadna Aram, from Padna Aram, that is Milavan, from Lavan, Umi Esav, from Esav, Shenizdavgu Leibaderach, who confronted him on the journey. So in the very next Rashi, it uses the word Shalem, that he came unscathed, that he came unharmed, and that he was safe from the lion's teeth. And he uses the word Shalem. So why over here? Why can't Rashi just say that? Vayava Yaakov Shalem. Yaakov came whole. That he survived. That he was unharmed. That he was safe. Why start talking about details about a hip, about money, about Torah? Just say that he was safe and sound. That's what seems most natural. And we cannot say that Shalem. When I say whole, what it could mean is that you have something whole, and then there was a lack, and now you have to fill the lack and now make it whole again. your gas tank, you had a full gas tank. The gas tank, then you drove. So now the gas tank is empty and now I have to refill it. So you go say, oh, now the tank is full. Now the tank is whole. Now the tank is complete. Now the gas tank is complete. But you can't say that here because it wouldn't apply to all three issues. Because you could say, okay, there was some kind of lack. He was hurt in the hip. So there was some kind of deficiency and then it became whole. Now he recovered. Or there was some kind of lack in the money and now it became whole and he got the money back. Because that wouldn't work for the Torah learning. Because throughout there was never a lack. There was never a point where his Torah learning wasn't intact. So you can't say that Shalem means Vayav Yaakov Shalem, that Rashi has to say, oh, Yaakov came and Yaakov came whole, that he can't just say, oh, he was saved from danger, but that whole here means that there was a lack and had to be filled, because that would not apply to all three events, to all three situations, and therefore we can't say that the word shalem means that there was a lack that was filled, because it would only apply to 2 out of the 3 cases. Okay. Shalem can't mean filling a lack, which could apply to the hip and money, because there was never a lack in Yaakov's Torah study. And also, I didn't write this in the poem, but also because in the very next Rashi, the word shalem is used for danger. It doesn't mean a lack that had to be filled. Okay. The explanation is, now we have the answer, finally. The explanation is that immediately after Yaakov left to Haran, Hashem promised him a ton. Behold, I am with you and will guard you wherever you go. The fact that Hashem kept his word, we already know. Hashem promised him, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna guard you wherever you go, and I'm not gonna forsake you. Hashem already promised that to him. Once Hashem gives a promise, we know for sure that it's gonna be fulfilled. I don't need the pasuk to come and tell me that Hashem's promise was fulfilled. It's automatic. We don't need the pasuk to tell us that. And we see that by Avram. By Avram, it doesn't say that he arrived whole. So the fact that it says whole by Yaakov is because the Torah has another goal.
Doesn't the Bible say that Yaakov gathered and used up?
Content to be called chasadim.
So I've been reading last week.
Yeah.
Like Yaakov thought he used up all his study.
He thought he used up all of his merits. Okay, so that's Yaakov's issue. I'm sorry for being so whatever. What Yaakov thought is what Yaakov thought. But if Hashem promised him that he's going to guard him and not forsake him, we don't need the Torah to come and say, guess what, guys? Hashem guarded him and Hashem didn't forsake him. Because we don't find by Abraham that when he arrived to Eretz Yisrael, it says, oh, Avram arrived whole. It's not necessary. We know for sure. We know for sure that everything was fine. So the fact that by Avram, it doesn't say that he arrived whole. So the fact that it says whole by Yaakov is because the Torah has another goal. The Torah wants to teach that we are not speaking about the promise of wholeness, but rather we are speaking about events that were not included in the promise. We're not speaking about the regular things. Hashem promised Yaakov, he's going to guard him and he's not going to forsake him. And for that, we don't need the Torah to tell us that Hashem guarded him and didn't forsake him. That's a given. There are other things that are not, for some reason, are not included in the promise. And in those areas that are not included in the promise, in those areas, Vayava Yaakov Shalem, Yaakov came whole. In 3 other areas. Why weren't they included in the promise? Let's see.
With your money, with your kids, with your learning, with your
body intact, like why these specific problems are using on top?
Okay, so we're going to take each one and we're going to see why it was not included in the promise, and the chiddush, the novelty, that he came whole in those areas. Don't thank me, it's the Rebbe.
Them says I'm not Hariti, but ultimately it's people that have heard of, well, the same promise Hashem made to all of us.
Right.
We don't have that promise from Hashem.
So very soon we're going to take it into our life, because Hashem also promises us as the Jewish people that he's going to guard us, he's not going to forsake us. And yet we see pain and suffering and not everyone having all the money that they need. So how does we're gonna that's gonna be the next step. Okay, but first we're gonna take it in Yaakov's life, and then we're gonna go to our lives. The first event that Yaakov was limping on his thigh was because Hashem sent an angel from on high. The promise only covered being guarded from Lavan and Esav, but not from a divine agent from the one above. When Hashem said, I'm going to guard you and I'm going to protect you and I'm not going to forsake you, it was from wicked people on earth. But for some reason, there was an angel that came and heard him. Now that angel came directly from Hashem from above. Hashem can't say, I'm going to guard you from myself. Where did that angel come from? That angel was a direct messenger from Hashem. An angel doesn't have a will of its own. So the fact that the angel came to fight him, and there was a reason why the angel had to come to fight him, and that was not part of the promise, because the promise was about human beings that are going to hurt you. And this is a divine being, so therefore it wasn't included in the promise, and therefore Hashem, therefore it's important for us to know that when he comes to Shechem, he's whole. And even in this area that wasn't included in the promise, he came whole. The second event is that Yaakov gave Esav gifts so many, but he remained just as wealthy. The lack Hashem did fill. Although it wasn't part of the promise, this was Hashem's will. So Hashem promised him, he's going to guard him, he's not going to forsake him. That means that he's going to have food to eat. So the fact that Yaakov chose to give Esav presents for 9 years, first of all, it didn't affect his bank account because he was so rich. He wasn't just rich, he was very, very rich. So if a billionaire gives $1 million to tzedakah, he doesn't affect the food that's going to be on a Shabbos table, right? So he was so rich that if he chose to give Esav presents for 9 years, that's on him. It's the fact. So Hashem doesn't have to replenish that money. First of all, he was still rich, and second of all, who asked you to give presents for 9 years? So the fact that Hashem gave him back every single penny, that replenished every penny that he used for Esav, that was not part of the promise. The promise was, you can have food to eat. I'm going to take care of you. And even when Esav is giving presents for 9 years, Yaakov still had plenty. So the fact that Hashem made sure that he wouldn't even lose 1 penny from all the gifts that he gave, that was a bonus. That was a bonus. And therefore, it's an extra thing. Vayav Yaakov Shalem, when he came to Shechem, you should know that all of the money that he used for Esav, he got back. That's extra. That wasn't included in the promise. The third event is that although Yaakov worked both night and day, the Torah that he learned always did stay. This was a bonus that Hashem gave to him. What was included in the promise was only that he would be shalem from sin. What was the promise? The promise was that Hashem gave, I'm going to guard you and I'm going to protect you and I'm not going to forsake you. That means that when you're in Lavan's house, Lavan is not going to affect you. You're not going to fall and sin in Lavan's house. And that's why Yaakov, when he meets Esav, he says, Im Lavan garti, I lived with Lavan, and Garti, if you take the right, if you unscramble the letters, is Taryag 613. But Taryag mitzvahs shamarti, I still kept the 613 mitzvahs. So the promise was you're going to be in Lavan's house. You're going to be in a terrible environment with a tricky monster, and it's not going to affect you, and you're not going to sin. But the promise wasn't that the promise wasn't that he's not going to forget any of the learning that he learned for 14 years in the house of Shem and Aver, and the learning that he learned with his father, when for 20 years he worked so hard. And according to halacha, it was the right thing. He was supposed to devote himself to 20 years to work for 20 years. He had a job and he did it 100%, and that was a great. But when you're working night and day, when you're invested in working, how are you supposed to learn at the same time? It's impossible. At least to review all the material from, you expect yourself to 20 years after you come out of school to remember everything that you learned in school, in all your elementary and high school. It's impossible. You're not reviewing or whatever it is. So the fact that he didn't forget anything that he learned, although for 20 years his main occupation was work day and night, that was a bonus. That wasn't included in the promise. And that's why, and that's okay, and that's what it means, V'yav Yaakov Shalem, that he comes to Shechem with 3 bonuses that are not part of the promise. Number 1, his hip is healed, which came from an angel from above, not from a wicked person down here. Number 2, the money was replenished, which was not part of the promise because he was already rich anyway. And number 3, that he didn't lose any of the Torah in Lavan's house. That was also a bonus. The promise was that he's not going to sin. The promise didn't have anything to do with retaining the Torah knowledge that he had before. Okay, now I'm going off script. The poem is going to have to be finished a different day, hopefully by Friday. Okay, now we're going to answer to the 2 questions, and then we're going to take it to our life. Now we understand why, when it says Vayav Yaakov Shalom, Yaakov came complete, it doesn't mention his children, because the children is part of the promise. So it doesn't have to mention children. We're looking for other things. And now we're also going to understand why Rashi doesn't use the explanation that Yaakov's Torah was whole, although he was traveling on the journey, because anything that has to do with the journey is also part of the promise. So therefore, he has to go to Lavan's house to find something else that's not included in the promise to say that Yaakov arrived whole in a different area. So the 3, Vayav Yaakov Shalem, Rashi specifically is choosing 2 from the Medrash and 1 of his own, but specifically using 3 things. The Yaakov came whole, that's not included in the promise. And that's why it doesn't mention children, and that's why it specifically has to go to, to travel back in time to Lavan's house and not to use something so much more current of the actual journey, because the actual journey, Hashem said, I'm going to guard you, and that would include that his Torah learning wouldn't be affected from the journey. Okay, now ready to take it to our life? Okay, this is the hard stuff. Okay, so usually in the Rebbe's teachings, we call something when the lesson for our life is called Yena Shel Torah, the wine of Torah, and that's usually left to like one, like the end, like the last part. It's like divided into ICAs, like Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Like the end speaks about the lesson for our life. Here, the lesson for our life is taking a very big chunk of the Sicha. So we have quite a way to go. Okay. So already in Ois Vav, already in the 6th part, it says from the wine of Torah. What's the deeper explanation? So we know Maisa Avasim and Labanim, whatever happened to our forefathers, is a sign and a lesson for us, for his children. So when we say, and Yaakov arrived Shalem to the city of Shechem, this teaches us that every single Jew, we are going to arrive shalem. We are going to arrive complete from this exile. It's talking to us.
When?
When?
Qualified for that.
Yes, today. So Galus, exile, we see a lot of pain and suffering, and we see things that we don't always see Hashem's protection every minute. It doesn't always seem like we see Hashem's protection. But we have to know that in the end, we're going to be shalom. In the end, we're going to be complete. Lavan and Esav, on their own, cannot harm a Jew. And in Galus, no one could harm us permanently. Hashem promises us before we go down to exile, behold, I am with you and I will guard you wherever you go, and no one has the power to touch a Jew. So what happens is sometimes there's an angel from above that comes and tests us. And so it seems that there's a lack. It seems that there's suffering. I should say pain. There is pain. But we have to realize that at the end, there's going to be shalom. At the end, there's going to be the healing. What does this mean? You see, when something doesn't go right, when it seems like Hashem is not protecting us, we have to realize that there could be many, many other times that we were in danger, that Hashem did protect us, that we didn't even know about it. But the times that it seems like there is no protection, what's happening is the pain is not coming from below, but it's coming from above to test us and to make us grow. I know it's very hard to understand that. We have to realize that it's only temporary. And as soon as we pass the test, Hashem is going to take it away. What comes to mind, my father, years ago, he took some kind of test and they found something and he had surgery for it. And the doctor, he took a regular, nothing was bothering him. He just took a regular standard test. And because of that, they found something that wasn't good, and they took care of it. And the doctors told him, you should get on the radio and you should tell everybody, because most people, they go to the doctor when something's bothering them. But a regular test, usually everything comes out fine. But here he was just going for something routine, and it actually saved his life. And when he went in for the surgery, and then when he was recovering, there was a curtain, and the man right next to him was a Jewish person in his 80s who had never put on tefillin in his life. And because my father was there, my brother came to visit him. My brother put on tefillin with this individual, and then my father had no more business in the hospital, and out he went. So sometimes there's a challenge, could be a health challenge, but it's not coming from a place of that Hashem is not watching over. It's coming from a place of a test or a mission that something has to be accomplished. Another just talking about health, another health thing that comes to mind is that there was a woman that came to our Chabad house. I don't think it was Shavuos. I don't know which holiday it was. And the next day, she called and she complained bitterly. And she said, I was in your Chabad house and I ate the food and I got food poisoning because of you, because of the food wasn't fresh or whatever it was. And I took it to heart. Oh my goodness. Anyway, because she thought she had food poisoning, she went to the hospital. And the end is that they found that she had cancer. It wasn't the food poisoning. So she went for something thinking that it was food poisoning, and really they're able to save her from something much more, much more serious. So what I'm saying is that it seems like, oh, where was the protection? I got sick at Chabad, but really, it actually saved her life. She blamed it on this, that she wasn't feeling good. Where else could I have been? Where else did I eat food or whatever it is? Why was I feeling so terrible? So the point is that sometimes we are challenged and we do have pain, but we have to realize that it's not because some evil person has power over us, because Hashem promises us when we go into Galus, He's going to guard us and protect us. So if there is pain and if there is suffering, it's not just for the sake of it's not for the sake of pain. It's because Hashem wants to test us, because Hashem wants to see our mesiras nefesh. Hashem wants to see that our ability to give up our life for Him. So this is not included in the promise, because there's so many times a day. How many times are we in the car and we're this close to an accident? And how many times a day? Yesterday, Miriam was they were dancing, and Miriam, she's 4 years old, she got hurt, so she got a scratch on her face, so she went to lay down to recuperate from the scratch.
Yeah.
While she's laying down, the 2-year-old, he just turned 2, came and he had something in his hand and he threw it at her, and right beneath her eye, he hit her. She was gushing blood. I was petrified. Blood was flying everywhere. And thank God it was dropped beneath her eye. I'm saying one more one more quarter of an inch. It could have been who knows what. So I'm saying you can look at it and say, oh my gosh, why did that have to happen? We're on the way to Bas Mitzvah now. Everyone's gonna have to know why she has a black and blue eye, whatever it is. But I'm saying it was crazy protection that he didn't hit her in the eye. He was this close, this close. So I'm saying you could look at it and you could say, oh my goodness, what a terrible thing. But on the other hand, you could look at it and say, oh my gosh, there was tremendous protection here. Why this had to happen, I have to think about it. Maybe it was a test for, I don't know. But that it's not because the 2-year-old has power to throw something, but it's because Hashem is giving us a test, there's something here that we have to overcome. And we have to think about what that is. So in general, sometimes you think you see a lack, you see a deficiency, you see something going wrong, or not how you envisioned it. But don't get stuck, because ultimately, A, it's temporary, and B, we're going to come to a place of wholeness. So this is, I don't know if you want to call this humorous or not, but my daughter Shira, she's going to be 12 soon. So my daughter Menucha, who comes before her, Menucha was 6 weeks old when my grandfather passed away. And I loved him with all my heart and soul, and I wanted to honor him so much. And then when I was pregnant again, I was absolutely 100% positive I'm having a boy, for many reasons. Just one of the reasons was that the Rosh Hashanah before when I did Kaparis, we realized after we did Kaparis that there were 3 male chickens in the box and there were no female chickens in the box. I was like, for sure it's a boy, for sure it's a boy. Anyway, she was born and she was a girl. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I had a girl. I was positive it was a boy. I'm gonna name for my grandfather Shmuel Isaac, and there is no girl, yeah, there is no name that you could do for a girl for Shmuel Isaac. Shalams. I don't know. I was trying, but I couldn't come up with anything for Shmuel Isaac. The end is I was sitting in the hospital and I was trying to find names, and it said something numerology. I don't know, it didn't mean gematria, but I started thinking about gematria. Anyway, Shira was named Shira. First of all, the Shabbos that she was named was Shabbos Shira. And second of all, Shira is the exact numerical equivalence of Shmuel Isaac, 515, and also Hanan, whatever it is. So Shira got Shira. And she's the most delightful, incredible girl ever. And then after Shira came Shmuel Isaac. So I have two kids. I have two kids that I named for my grandfather, not one. So it seemed like, oh my gosh, why did I have a girl? I really wanted to name for my grandfather, da, da, da. But the end is from all the grandkids, no one else named Shira by itself. And no one else had the opportunity to name two kids for my grandfather. So I got double. So you think, oh, is a lack, but no, actually I ended up getting double. So that's just a humorous twist on things. But the point is that when we see the pain, when we experience the pain, to know that there's no human being that has the control or the power to hurt us. If we are challenged, it's like the angel that came to fight. That's the angel that came to fight Yaakov, that was specifically from Hashem, straight from Hashem, a challenge straight from Hashem for us to grow, for us to prove our self-sacrifice, our Mesiras Nefesh. I don't know if it was the Rebbe or the Frierdiker Rebbe said that when the Jews were in Russia, in communist Russia, when a gun was pointed to their head, they were ready to give their life for Yiddishkeit. But the second they came to America, the golden Medina and everything is free, all of a sudden some of them weren't able to stay religious because they didn't have that pressure. Sometimes the fact that someone is threatening your Judaism, that's what brings out the Pintel Yid. That the challenge is what brings out your commitment to God. But the second there's no challenge, then then they didn't have the wherewithal to stick to the religion.
Says anti everything that in this world comes from sex, and it says that's one of the reasons it's very long after that. It says it's because when people try to attack us, the nature of the Jew is to get together, even though from all different types. Like we saw now in October
100%.
country was so divided, and suddenly we saw how they can be food, and they were accepted, and they were mixing together, and it's a whole interesting facet that is why Hashem really can't to get us to come together.
100%. Yeah. 100%. So we see, October 7th, what happened? There was pain and suffering, and we don't understand why. But the fact is that there was an incredible awakening, specifically from people that weren't religious. It was an incredible awakening because it's like an olive. When you take an olive and you squeeze it, what comes out? Yeah, when you squeeze shemen zayizach, pure olive oil, right? So what was the Hanukkah is coming? You squeeze the olive, the purest, and what comes out? The best of the best. So when we're squeezed in galus, the best comes out. The Pintel Yid shines. So we have to realize that it's not that Hashem is not protecting us. Hashem is always protecting us. But that when we have a challenge, it's the challenge is coming. Maybe it looks like it's coming through a human being, but the human being doesn't really have the power over us. It's just Hashem is directly challenging us, and specifically in the time of terrible persecution for the Jews, when the Jews had a choice, either bow down to the cross or will kill you. Specifically in those times, that was not a lack of protection, but rather it was because it was a very difficult time. It was a time that the Mesiras Nefesh, at the sacrifice that we have for Hashem, the fact that we're willing to give up our life for Hashem, literally, that was what came out. So it's a different perspective when you look at pain and suffering, to look at it that it's coming from Hashem directly, and it's not just, oh, Hashem is not watching over me, Hashem doesn't care about me. It's actually the opposite. Hashem is giving me specifically opportunity to reach the deepest part of my soul, and as soon as I do that, it's going to be taken away. As soon as to do that, the challenge is going to stop. It's going to and it will go away. Okay, so that's Ois Zayin, the purpose of pain. One of the unique. We discussed this. I'm just making sure that I didn't leave anything out. One of the unique elevations of the divine service during the time of Galus is the service of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. For this reason, the suffering of exile comes, heaven forbid, it's a test. The Lord your God is testing you in order to evoke the element of Mesiras Nefesh within Jews. And this is what it means that the prince of Esav, the Malach of Esav, touched the socket of Yaakov's hip. And the Ramban explains the medrash on this verse, that not only did the Malach touch Yaakov's hip, but he touched all the righteous who were destined to descend from him. And this is referring to the generation of religious persecution, Shmad. This is an allusion to the suffering of exile in the most severe manner. For these sufferings are in order to awaken within Jews their Mesiras Nefesh. The fact that the angel hurt Yaakov, didn't just affect Yaakov. It affected the generations where there's going to be the most suffering, the Cossacks, the Spanish Inquisition, the Holocaust. That's what it affected. And the purpose and the reason that it happened was not because Hitler was in control and Hashem wasn't there. No. It's because it was to awaken the Mesiras Nefesh of the Jews. And so there's a danger here. You might think that these sufferings are coming from Esav below. But it's really from Esav above. It's really from Esav's angel. They come from above in order to bring out Mesiras Nefesh in Jews. And you might think that it's permanent, chas v'shalom. Therefore, the verse assures us, shalem in his body, that he was healed from his limb. That after one carries out the service of exile, after we have the Mesiras Nefesh, the suffering is completely nullified. And Yaakov was healed, and we will be healed. So we have to realize that the pain, it's not a true reality. It's just to get us to reveal the strength of our Mesiras Nefesh. Now comes the next one, the money. Nothing was lacking from his entire gift. The purpose of Galus is that we should emerge from it shalem, whole. It's not only that we should emerge from it whole, but we should transform the exile and elevate the world. And this is true about Yaakov, that not only was he saved from Lavan and Esav, but he took a vast amount of wealth from Lavan. And that's why it says that when Esav met Yaakov, he kissed him, right? He kissed him and he embraced him. to the point that according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it was with all his heart. Even though there's a law that Esav hates Yaakov, which means that the point of being in Galus is not just that we should come out unharmed, but the point is that we should transform the world. And therefore it came to a point that even Esav was transformed, that when he came to meet Yaakov, that he actually kissed him and loved him for real. And this is and the same is when Mashiach comes. Esav is going to recognize Esav and all the nations are going to recognize Hashem. As the Rambam says, that Mashiach will fix the entire world to serve Hashem together. For it is stated, for then I will turn to the nations to all call in the name of Hashem. All the nations of the world are going to call in the name of Hashem when Mashiach comes, which means that not only will we be unharmed, but that the entire world is going to be elevated. So a person could say, okay, so Yaakov gave gifts, right? So gifts means my investment in the world. I have to give of my money. I have to give of my time to invest it in the world in order to elevate the world. I have to use my money, I have to earn money and use the money to buy oil, to buy a menorah, to buy a lulav and esrog. I have to plant, I have to sow, I have to work in the world. So all these things, all the investment that I put into the world, I could say, oh, it's such a shame. I have to work so hard and waste so much time that could have been better used for Torah. So first of all, before Yaakov gave the gifts, he davened. So before we go into the world, we have to daven. That's number one. But number two, don't feel bad about all the money that you give to tzedakah and about all the time that you have to work and about all the investment that you have to put into the physical world, because when Mashiach comes, it's going to be Vayava Yaakov Shalem. Everything that you invest into the world is going to be your asset, and you're going to get it back. All the money that you gave to tzedakah is going to be yours. You elevated it to spirituality. It's going to be part of your accomplishment. None of it is wasted. Sorry. None of it is wasted. So I'll just say this, that when we had Hebrew school for 10 years, we had twin boys and twin girls. And when it came to it was amazing. When we had the twin girls for their bas mitzvah, they said the 12 psukim, that was their reading. And for each of the psukim, we gave them a gift. For Torah Tziva, we gave them an ice and sefer Torah. And we spent a few $100 on for their bas mitzvah. Both of them each like a suitcase with their Hebrew name embroidered in it. And we gave them a siddur. We gave them a mezuzah. We gave them a necklace with a Shabbos candle on it. We gave them, I don't even remember all the 12 gifts. We gave them 12 Shabbos candlesticks. We gave them 12 gifts. And we spent so much money. And we invested so much. And they promised that after the bas mitzvah, they're going to come back. And they never did. And this week, after 8 years, we hadn't seen them in 8 years, this past Friday night, the two of them, they came in their cool Jeep at 3:58. They showed up. I didn't think I was ever ready in time for Shabbos like this week. And we had the most incredible reunion, Shabbos meal, etc. And also, in their last year of Hebrew school, we did we studied Bereshis, and I have a cricket machine. I don't know if you know what that is, but basically, I spent hours, cut time, besides for the money that we invested, so much time cutting out all these little pieces of paper, and then you glue them all together and you create all kinds of stuff. And they made a Bereshis scrapbook with the cricket machine. I can't tell you how much time we spent with the cricket machine. And then they made these, so we went through the whole Bereshis, and each parsha we had a poem, and then the whole creation that they made. And for 8 years, these scrapbooks are sitting in my house, because because they promised they were going to come back and they never came back with all this time invested in these scrapbooks. And my kids were showing the parsha, the ladder with the angels. And I said, hey, guess what, Carly and Haley? I have your books from your scrapbooks from when you did Bereshis, and they also had a ladder and angels in their scrapbooks. And I took it out and I showed it to them. They were so excited to see it. And I didn't say anything because on Shabbos, according to halacha, you're not allowed to give someone something to take home. Like I would have wanted to give them challah, take home to their parents, but I know according to halacha, you can't give anything even though you really want to. But they, without asking, whatever, they took home their scrapbooks that they had made, that they had invested so much time in. 8 years later, it was still ready, waiting for them. I'm saying the money that we spent for the bas mitzvah and the 10 years of Hebrew school and the hours and hours that they put into the scrapbooking and whatever it is, nothing is wasted. At the end, Vayav Yaakov Shalom, it could take 8 years or whatever, but the end is that any penny that you invested in this world to elevate the world, it's all your credit. And Vayav Yaakov Shalom, don't think, it's such a waste that I have to work so hard, but the tzedakah that you gave and the money that you invested and the time that you invested to elevate the world, all that is going to come with you when Mashiach comes. It's part of your accomplishment. So that's the money part. So don't think there's going to be a lack. It seems like there's a lack. It seems like there's a lack. I'm using money. I'm wasting money. I'm wasting time. But really, it's all going to be replenished. And then comes the third part, and that is Torah study. Shalom and Torah. He did not forget his learning Torah in Lavan's house. Okay. So you would think, okay, so what did Yaakov do? He secluded himself for 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver to learn Torah. A person could think, look, Hashem expects me to live in this exile and to refine the world. So surely it's impossible for me to learn Torah on a lofty level. So therefore we tell him that Yaakov did not forget his learning in Lavan's house about the health and your money. There could be a lack. A person could have pain, or a person could feel like they're spending so much money. It feels like there's a lack. A lack could occur for a temporary time, and only afterwards do you become whole. But regarding Torah, no lack could ever occur. And why is this? The Frierdiker Rebbe says, only our bodies were handed over into exile and the subjugation of the kingdoms, but our souls were not driven into exile and were not handed over to the subjugation of the kingdoms. The meaning of this is, not only is it that the nations of the world do not dominate over our soul, but even more so, that the service of exile, being in exile, even the avodah of exile does not touch the inner dimension of the soul, which is higher than exile. The fact that we're going to Galus, it only touches the external parts of the soul. But about the soul itself, which was not driven into exile, no descent is possible. And therefore, he did not forget his learning in Lavan's house. The Torah that Yaakov learned while being secluded from the world remained whole with him, even in Lavan's house. One more paragraph. And the deeds of the fathers are a sign for the children, that every Jew has the infusion of strength from Yaakov, that he should not only be shalom when emerging from the exile, but even during the time of exile itself, while finding himself in Lavan's house, he could be on the level of he did not forget his learning. His spiritual matters remain whole, shalom in his Torah. Okay, so that's it. So basically what we're saying is that everything else in Galus, we experience pain temporarily, or we experience a lack of money temporarily, and then there'll be a time of Shalem when Mashiach comes. With regards to Torah, Torah was never forgotten from Yaakov, and all the learning, that we do in Galus will never be forgotten. There will never be a lack. It's always with us. It's always with us, and we could be whole in our Torah learning even before Mashiach comes. Because only our body is in Galus, and our soul, the inner dimension of the soul, is not affected by Galus whatsoever, and always remains above it. Okay, so that's the end of the teaching. Okay, any questions? I know it's a lot.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, we always have all of the Torah inside of us.
Yes.
And
The-
also,
The Torah is eternal. The Torah is eternal, and all the Torah that we do, all the Torah that we learn,
so why-
no one could touch it. No one could touch it. That means, what do you say?
So why do we have to learn it if we have it inside of us?
No. We have to learn it, and then once we learn it, no one could ever take it away from us.
Well, that's what I always said about education.
Yeah.
The one thing nobody can ever take away.
And that's what frustrated our enemies in every single generation.
That's true.
Even in October 7th, our enemies they could beat our bodies.
They can't.
They can't take our spirit. And it doesn't make sense. Because the spirit of a Jew, the essence of a Jew, the neshama of a Jew is not in their hands. And no matter what they say, no matter what they try, the hostages, they were trying to, force them to convert to Islam or who knows what. They have no power. They have no power. And this is in all the generations, our enemies could never understand the emunah, the faith, the going into the gas chamber, singing animamin. I mean, they couldn't, it's beyond, because they can't, the Torah is whole. The Torah is whole always, no matter what. And it could never be taken away from us. What we learn cannot be touched. Our neshama can't be touched by our enemies.
What about the Jews that are not learning and have no connection?
So first of all, every Jew has a connection.
And so the soul is there.
The soul is there. Every Jew is connected. The question is, what's the level of awareness?
There are many that are very not aware.
That's our mission. That's why we're here. It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to go out into the world and to invest ourselves in the world. And even if it takes money and effort and time, if a person is gonna, make a challah bake and hire, I just found out how much it costs to hire the challah lady. No, but I'm saying that these things, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of investment and flyers and marketing. Oh, okay, by the way, I'll just talk about whatever. Mirz Hashem, next Tuesday is Yud-Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah for Hasidus, and Chabad of Tom's River, and Chabad of Jackson, and Chabad of Lakewood. Everyone together, we're all working together to have an event Tuesday night with Mrs. Chayateldin, Rebbetzin Chayateldin, who's a shlucha in Teaneck, or the Teaneck area, I think. She's an amazing shlucha. And I'm gonna post more information. I'm gonna post more information as soon as I have it. But I'm saying, when you make an event, and when you have, when we have the class at Bela's house, the food, the investment, the cooking, the time, the money, everything, it's all, nothing, none of it is going to waste. All of it comes with us when Mashiach comes, and Nothing, it's all part of the mission. We should never say, oh, I'm wasting my time to go and make an event, or I'm wasting money to hire this one, that one to come and speak and to pay for the driver, to pay for this, pay for that. That's why we're in this world. To yes, the sushi and the fancy kiddish and the meat boards and whatever else it entails, to yes, if that's what's going to bring people, if that's what's gonna, if it's challah, if it's whatever it is, we have to, yes, immerse ourselves in the world to find every single Jew and bring them whatever it takes, brownies, ice cream, I don't know, whatever it takes to get every single Jew to have the awareness, that they are truly one with Hashem. And sometimes it's in times of crazy persecution, it's the Jews that had zero awareness that all of a sudden were very, very aware, and they actually died. They actually gave up their life. For Hashem. A story that comes to mind. There was a boy who got into trouble, and he ended up joining a band of thieves, whatever it was, and he was caught. And they said to him, "You're going to be punished severely, but if you denounce your religion, then we'll let you go." And although he was like the lowest of the low, zero awareness, he was a big thief, but he said, "No, I'm not going to denounce my faith." And then when he was killed or whatever it was, it said on his tombstone, "Here lies the thief who was a tzaddik." You know what I'm saying? So the point is that the neshama is shining. We're always connected, and it's just a matter of awareness. And sometimes it's the challenge that brings out that awareness. And we shouldn't need to come to challenges. We should just be able to say, Hashem, we are aware. We're aware of everything, and we acknowledge you, and we love you, and we're serving you. We don't need the challenges to bring that neshama piece out. Anyway, we should merit the coming of Mashiach now, when we'll all, Vayava Yaakov Shalem, Yaakov is a Jewish people, will all arrive whole and complete, and any lack that there may have been will be refilled, and we should merit this immediately. Okay.
Wow. If anyone needs Brian.
Thank you for joining us, Sarala and Risa and Dorit.
Thank you, Connie.
Pleasure.